Thank you so much for joining us tonight and taking a moment to speak with us. Really appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
All right, yeah, no problem. So let's get right into the questions. So what is your stance on New York State Prop 1, and what would you tell people who are on the fence about the proposition?
Well, I support Prop 1. I was a sponsor of the enabling legislation that passed through 2 rounds of the legislature to get it on the ballot. I would say that it's a little bit simpler than I think people are possibly making it out to be. What we're trying to do is to put into the state constitution rights that are already in state law. So we're not creating any new laws, we're not creating any new statutes, any new provisions. What we're trying to do is to make sure that the rights that we do have to reproductive freedom, to anti-discrimination against people for age and sex, sexual orientation, are in the state constitution. It's as simple as that. I know it may sound like I'm discounting some of the concerns, but we're not upending medical consent or creating new uncomfortable circumstances for people. We're basically putting in the Constitution already existing rights and privileges that we want to make sure we protect.
All right. And next question, what is the top issue affecting the 123rd Assembly District?
There are a lot of top issues. They're all interconnected. Probably the 2 that I'm working on the most have to do with worker shortages and housing. We have a lot of people who want to come to this community, to want to bring their business here. We're the battery hub. We have a lot of growth industries that people are very excited about, BAE, Lockheed Martin, many others that are doing the kinds of energy work that people want to be part of. But when they come to our community, they're a little surprised to find that we don't really have as many workers as they need, nor do they have the housing for all demographics. And while we're certainly engaged in a lot of housing projects, we need more single-family homes. We need more homes for some of these businesses that want to relocate. So for me, it's worker shortages and housing. But one of the overarching issues, of course, is poverty. Binghamton area, Broome County, very high poverty levels that I'm imploring my colleagues in the community at large to help us address, because it's bringing with it a lot of concerns.
All right. And how will you ensure the state provides the resources needed for local municipalities to support housing concerns?
Well, the type of housing that Broome County is involved in, they're receiving a lot of support through the Department of Housing and Community Renewal. If you speak to the county executive, I mean, he has a laundry list, as well as the city mayor, of projects that he's interested in and are moving forward. We're bringing a lot of places online. My concern is that we also spread that across the entire region, not only address our homeless population, but again, all demographics for people who want to purchase their first home or get a break in doing a renovation on a home that's been in disrepair for some time. So we really need to address it from a lot of different points of view, but it's going to take everybody working together and addressing the fact that we have this problem, and it's not going to be solved simply by putting together affordable housing. It's a hugely important part, but we need to have a whole range of housing options available.
All right. And what steps must be taken to ensure people have access to mental health resources?
This is a difficult question. I worked in the mental health field as an educator for many years before I got elected, and the promise of deinstitutionalization, when a lot of people were released from the psychiatric center at the time, resources never really followed them into the communities. They wound up homeless, they wound up in jail, they wound up in very difficult circumstances. So while we want to help people become more integrated into the community, we have to have services for people who have chronic long-term mental health issues on the one hand, but on the other hand, we need primary prevention, and we need the services that go to every step in between. And while we, talk a good game in terms of our intentions, the resources aren't always there. So we argue for this point all the time. Fortunately, the Binghamton Psychiatric Center, some new beds are coming online up there for people who really need long-term inpatient care, but also our hospitals that provide the service and our community organizations are crying out for more help. And they also have worker shortages as well.
Gotcha. The recreational cannabis industry in New York State continues to grow, and what do you think needs to be done to ensure the recreational cannabis industry can grow responsibly?
There were a lot of safeguards that were built into the cannabis law in the first place. One of the groups that got hurt in the process were our farmers. Our cannabis farmers grew a whole year's worth of crop where they had no place to sell it. And I will not rest until that group gets compensated for their losses. We also have an illegal trade going on. I don't think people fully appreciated how much underground activity was actually happening. And when we managed to legalize use before we legalized the sale or had all the mechanics in place, we allowed the underground market to come and take over our neighborhoods. There are also a lot of concerns being expressed about the amount of cannabis smoke in the air. We have open container laws when it comes to alcohol, but we really are going to have to try to reel this back in some way. I don't know how you put the genie back in the bottle, but I think it's starting to come along, it's starting to improve. It's just a lot of concerns that have been expressed about unintended consequences, certainly for our farmers, for outdoor air, and for these illegal shops as well.
All right. New York State's bail reform laws remain controversial nearly 5 years after its passing. Do you think Albany needs to revisit bail reform laws, and if so, why?
Well, the bail reform laws have already been reformed 2 or 3 times in response to complaints from the public, from district attorneys, from our police and law enforcement. I'll never forget a conversation I had with one local law enforcement professional who said that he thought we had done the right thing on bail reform because so many people were being stranded in jail, but for the fact that they couldn't afford that small amount of money to get out. But what we didn't do was provide the resources needed, the wraparound services, the follow-through that would help these folks who now appear to be in a revolving door system get the help, focus, and assistance they need. So that's one part of it. The other part is that we do have pieces of the judicial system that may not have entirely caught up with the fact that they have judicial discretion. They have a lot of options at their disposal. And we're right now in the process of trying to take apart specific circumstances and see where things have gone wrong. There's an impression that the public has that we are just allowing this to go on, and many of us are very, very worried about it and want to make sure we get this right.
Small businesses and residents are struggling under the strains of inflation. What is your plan to combat inflation?
Well, the issue of cost of living and inflation is driven by many, many factors, and a good bit of them are at the federal level and having to do with supply chain and other circumstances the state legislature doesn't really control. For me, the issue is building back our tax base. Our community has gotten older and it's gotten poorer, yet we have the same number of services that we're trying to provide, that we have to provide for police, fire, emergency medical services, and the like. And so I want to make sure that by training more workers and by bringing more people into the fold, they'll be able to purchase those houses and then pay into the system. I think the county executive would like nothing more than to have a lot more taxpayers paying into the system so that we could actually lower taxes and stabilize our services. So I'm trying to stay in the lane that I can, and that involves not raising state taxes, potentially raising taxes on the wealthy to help pay for some of these other services that we've discussed. But in general, we have to grow our economy to help it become more affordable for everybody.
Absolutely. Flooding always remains a concern for the greater Binghamton area. What steps would you take to keep the community safe from flooding?
Well, obviously climate has been a big factor in all manner of extreme weather events. It's affecting our farmers, it's affecting communities like ours that have had these unexpectedly large floods 2 times in the last couple of decades. What we try to do is to provide the resources to address climate change, but in terms of flooding, it's very difficult to predict the weather. What we want to do is, where we can mitigate it, because there is a factor involved having to do with climate, we will, but in other respects, it really is a matter of being grateful that we're not living in a more dangerous area, although, I mean, we do have floods and hurricanes, but certainly not what we've been seeing in other parts of the country.
If the Assembly is flipped to Republican, how can you ensure that Democrats will work together peacefully?
I think the chances of that are slim. but were it to be the case, it wouldn't really worry me in terms of the way we would react. Democrats working together, Republicans working together. We have a very, very cordial working relationship at the moment. I'm known as a person who not only works across party lines, but has a very warm working relationship with the people who are in our community in particular. Because I chair the Committee on Agriculture and Food, I represent and lead on a lot of issues that are largely represented by my Republican colleagues. And there really is no Republican or Democratic way of handling basic things like food supply, childcare, home care, education funding. So we get along pretty well. It's some of the social issues that wind up splitting us up, but even then we're very respectful. So however it turns out, we've got problems to work on and we've got solutions to find that we can all live with.
Absolutely. You've been a New York State legislator for nearly 20 years, and what would you say is your biggest accomplishment as an elected official?
I have to say, making sure that the Southern Tier is recognized at every point in the state budget, through legislation, through any new initiative that is proposed. I am definitely the person in the room saying, what about the Southern Tier? We are competing oftentimes with the Thruway Corridor, and it's become sort of a thing where they always look to me, ready for me to say, we are just as special and just as important as the Thruway Corridor, where we have Buffalo and Syracuse, Rochester and Albany, I know them right off the top of my head, to make sure that the Southern Tier is noticed as an important part of our state with innovations and entrepreneurs and dreams and farms and all those places in between. I know it may sound kind of abstract, but I have to tell you, we've gotten a lot of resources here because I don't take no for an answer, and the Southern Tier is just a gem of a location all the way around. It's a beautiful region with great, hardworking people.
Well, thank you again so much for,
That was it?
That was it. All right, well, we'll do that last. Thank you.
Start that again.
It's okay, all good. I also, I want to redo the beginning part because we talked over that each other.
Sure,
So
whatever you need.
okay, you're good. All right.
Yep, ready.
All right. Well, thank you again so much, Donna, for giving us your time and answering these questions for us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.